The views and opinions expressed on this program do not reflect the company, owners, management, staff, clients, or partners.
Welcome to Bermuda's Daily Talk Show. It's the Daily Hour.
ChatGPT did become the world's most downloaded non-gaming app.
Literally the job of everyone in government to address the media and the public.
What are your thoughts, audience? What are your thoughts on Zandy Silva as the deputy PLP leader?
A community that can't feed itself is a community that doing.
What you may not know, though, is that Bermuda, we have a connection with Epstein, too.
Things that people are doing right, the youth are doing right, that is not being advertised enough.
When you see your access to U.S. dollars disappear, that's when you have a problem.
You've got a town in the UK with a similar sized population. This place absolutely outshines it.
It's Friday, the 16th day of January 2026. Welcome to Bermuda's Daily Talk Show. It's the Daily Hour brought to you by the BAC Group of Companies, Medical House, Lindo's, People's Pharmacy, and big love to Hot 1075 for ensuring that we can pump through the radio airwaves with these most important community conversations. I'm Jamel Hartman, and Teo Dill will be bringing us a news break brought to you by Peoples in a bit. How's everyone feeling today? It is Friday. Some of you really enjoy Fridays. And I don't know if it's because you hate your jobs or because you love your families or you just want to relax. But happy Friday to every last one of you. And some people still have to work on weekends. So Friday is just another day to some folks, depending on industry. But hopefully those who work a traditional work week, and this is your final day, hopefully you've had a rewarding and productive week. And you are ready to hopefully relax and enjoy the weekend with not as many chores as myself. All right, folks. Well, greetings, everyone, and thanks for making us part of your daily routine. A good one today as we welcome former Bermuda Progressive Labor Party Senator Arianna Hodgson onto the show. We're going to be discussing the seed fund idea that she presented recently, and we discussed it on the show earlier this week. So looking forward to the conversation with the senator to really get this going. Like, again, I don't see why. It's like the GoFundMe thing we were discussing. Like, these are two great ideas in early 2026 that I just don't understand why there would be reservations about either. So I'm looking forward to the conversation with the senator. The Daily Play is a things you should know. So I got to go in the box and get a question for you all. I'm lacking today. So I got to get you a question. And don't forget to subscribe on our website. Follow us on all of our social media channels to stay up to date with all that we have going on. Help us grow beyond the mic as we do our part to continue to improve our community. All right, let's just jump right into it. Question of the morning, folks, is how would you feel about Bermuda accepting U.S. deportees? And do you think Bermuda should accept potential third country deportations? Now, what am I talking about? You're probably like, what is Jamel on about this morning? Well, I was in the gym this morning, and while I'm in the gym, I either listen to music or, podcast, or I listen to some of my favorite talk shows and discussions. And one of the big topics in these United States of America right now, well, if you haven't been paying attention, it's what's going on in, well, some of our CARICOM nations. So there's been growing discussion in the region about Caribbean countries accepting U.S. deportees. And it's raising an important question, even for us. Should Bermuda even consider something like this? Now, before we answer this, let's remember something important. This wouldn't be the first time Bermuda was asked to help the United States manage a complex migration issue. Under Premier Dr. Ewa Brown, Bermuda accepted 4 Uyghur men who had been detained at Guantanamo Bay. They were cleared of wrongdoing, couldn't safely return to China, and Bermuda stepped in on humanitarian grounds. That decision was controversial, but it was also deliberate, limited, and sovereign. Today's discussion is actually a bit different. we're not talking about 4 clear detainees. We're talking about potential third country deportations, possibly involving people removed for immigration or criminal reasons. In a country as small as Bermuda, that changes everything from public safety to housing to social services to trust. So the real question isn't whether Bermuda should automatically say yes or no. The question is, if we ever say yes, under what conditions and who gets to decide? Because cooperation without transparency isn't partnership, it's pressure. And humanitarianism without safeguards isn't compassion, it's risk. So, question of the morning is, do you believe, or how would you feel about Bermuda accepting US deportees? And do you think Bermuda should accept potential third party country deportations? Now, keep in mind, Bermuda's not an independent nation. Remember, part of the concerns people had about Dr. Brown was that some people said he didn't have authority to do such a thing because we're UK territory. I was going to say colony, right? But I don't know. But here's the thing with what happened when Bermuda previously accepted Uyghur detainees. It was done, without most of his cabinet knowing. And it raised questions about sovereignty, security, and US pressure at the time, right? Now, Dr. Brown thought he'd done what was, the right thing on humanitarian grounds, the security vetting and resettlement support. They were unable to return to China due to the risk of persecution, and they were cleared of wrongdoing. Now, how would that precedent apply today? They both raise sovereign questions, right? Public safety concerns, human rights obligations. Both require public trust and clear government communication. Now, the key difference, as I mentioned, is that the Uyghurs were not criminals and they were granted residency on humanitarian grounds. Current discussions around deportees may include people removed for immigration violations or criminal convictions. Scale matters. Bermuda accepted 4 individuals, not large numbers, right? So if Bermuda were ever to consider accepting US deportees or third country migrants again, it would need, 1, absolute clarity on who's being accepted. We can't risk having violent or sexual offenders. We need full background checks, right? Not quiet pressure or backroom diplomacy, right? There needs to be clear humanitarian or strategic justification. Public consultation. The Uyghur decision sparked debate because, again, there was a lack of transparency where Dr. Brown at the time said, we had to keep this hush, right? Today's environment actually demands more transparency than ever. And we need defined limits, like how many people, clear legal status, and defined support and exit pathways, right? So to give you more context, the countries that have, the news has been reporting recently that several Caribbean countries, including Antigua and Barbuda, Dominica, and potentially Guyana, I believe St. Kitts and Nevis might be in there as well. I'm not too sure. But they've agreed to accept migrants deported from the US under policies allowing third country removals. And that means migrants are sent to a country other than their place of origin or citizenship. Now, these moves amid broader US efforts to ramp up deportations eases pressure at the US border, and Caribbean governments are weighing how to respond. ICE data from 2024 shows thousands of CARICOM nationals already on US deportation lists, including from Jamaica, Guyana, and smaller islands. Even a handful of Bermudians are on the list. Yeah. At the same time, human rights experts have raised alarm that third country deportations can expose people to serious harm or violate international protections if not handled carefully. This is a huge question because it should be a sovereign choice, but Bermuda's not a sovereign nation. And it does raise serious questions as to who should make this call for Bermuda. if it comes to that. Now, I know the argument from some as well, we need more people in Bermuda, but there's a thing called quality versus quantity that needs to be considered. The resource and community impact, the security and public safety, human rights and international law, regional solidarity versus national interest. Folks, this is your daily discussion brought to you by Titan Express and Secure. Let's go to the comments again. How would you feel about Bermuda accepting U.S. deportees? And do you think Bermuda should accept potential third country deportations? Let's see. Kenton Trott says, very valid questions, Jamal. I need to know more before I answer. Okay. We've got Suzanne Ingham says, no, send those deportees back where they came from. We don't need any criminals and we don't need U.S. deportees. The YS need to, what's YS? The YS need to send them back. US, I think she means the US need to send them back where they came from. No, we have enough issues, including housing. No. Well, here's the thing. I understand where you're coming from, Suzanne. I do. But these people can't go back to their nations. Now, some of them can't. Maybe I'm a cold individual, audience. Maybe I'm cold. But I'm sorry. I don't think Bermuda needs to accept anyone that the United States feels doesn't belong in their country because of a criminal record. My biggest concern in all of this is security. That's my biggest concern in all of this. It's security. In no way possible should Bermuda risk its security. And thankfully or not, I mean, this may sound really hypocritical of me, but thankfully, I don't think that's a decision that our government can just make on its own, despite what happened with the Uyghurs. All right, let's go back to the comments. Taj Donville Outerbridge, our colleague on TDH, he says, I'm a firm no. No nation should accept deportees from the U.S. admin. We should not participate in this level of such naked violations of human rights and humanitarian law by ICE and Trump. Goes on to say, many of the migrants are not criminals. Many of them are being deported without due process. And that's been in the news. That has been actually shown, right? It's a tough one because with the Uyghurs, I was absolutely against it based on how it went, right? I felt like, what? Why was this decision made without, our consent, or shouldn't everyone know this, and da-da-da-da. And then I was like, okay, they were cleared of any wrongdoing. They can't return home and so on. So I bought into it afterward, right? I went with the hype immediately and bought into it afterwards. I was in the PLP Central Committee. I was there it was the Monday, I think, after the Uyghur situation. I mean, people were up in arms, people standing up against Dr. Brown and other people in support. I will never forget that experience. I believe Teo was there as well because he was a senator, right? I know what came with that beyond what you saw in the news in the streets. And if that was a big thing, this will set Bermudians off. I really believe it would. What else, audience? How would you feel? Is there anyone in favor of this? How would you feel about Bermuda accepting U.S. deportees? Renee Simmons says, oh, no. We don't need no more headaches other than what we already have. Please, we need people, but no hardcore criminals. We have more than what we can handle already. We should only take our own only. Well, I agree. If we're going to be accepting people or taking people, first thing, and I think Charles H. Jefferson II says it in the audience all the time, we need to find a way to get Bermudians back before we start talking about anyone else. But take your point. Who else, audience? Who else? What are your thoughts? Do you think we should accept potential third country deportations? There's not a yes in the audience yet, but what are your thoughts? Manuela says, no, the current U.S. administration has a habit of putting on substantiated labels on individuals. Can we trust them? Well, yeah. I can say that it's been in our face that they have put labels on people, and it's hard to trust in that respect. But again, going back to the Uyghur situation, I know how I felt about that initially. But it made sense over time to me, you know? Again, this is different, as I mentioned. This is different. This is different. And you see, if you've been following the news, some of the people in the CARICOM nations who have accepted this, a lot of the locals are not happy about it. They're not happy, and I understand why. Like, we're not dumping grounds. We are not dumping grounds, right? Suzanne Ingham says exactly, Jamal. Why should we risk our security? Anika DeShield says we cannot support the reporters. No housing. Reporter. Okay, I'm gonna say. Think she means deportees. We cannot support the deportees. No housing, and the U.S. actions really legal. I think are the U.S. actions really legal or right? Just because it's a law doesn't mean it's always right. Slavery and apartheid were legal. Well, conscription was legal. It wasn't right. That was my argument back then. But look, man, the UN and international law doesn't really stand up to this stuff, whether it's legal or right. You know, I would love to know what our government thinks about this, though. If there are any MPs or opposition senators, opposition MPs, or anyone in the audience today, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. I'm going to text Dr. Brown and ask him his thoughts on this. Because I'd really like to know, and folks, this is your daily discussion brought to you by Titan Express and Secure. Taj Donville Otteridge says, we need to stop criminalizing migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers, please, especially in this Trump era. I agree. You know, it was a discussion we had way back on this show. We're heading on 6 years already. Wow, congratulations to TDH audience for making that happen. But one of the first years, I remember a discussion. We asked, why is it that one group is called expats and the other group's called immigrants? Right? Remember where that conversation went. And it seems almost like today it's easier to criminalize the immigrant while seeing the expat as of more value or valuable to your jurisdiction or country or city or town. But I take this point. We've got to stop criminalizing people for seeking a better life. And we have to understand why people actually seek a better life in the spaces they go. A lot of the reasons are because people have been displaced by war and, things that said country has done to theirs, right? Suzanne Ingham says exactly, we are not a dumping ground for any country. Yeah, we're not. Richard Scott says, if the process is carried out with fidelity, then possibly on the surface, no, but it would have to be vetted on a case-by-case basis. Folks may have fled their countries for legitimate reasons and may need a chance for a fresh start. I think that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. And that's why I said, Brother Richard, that my concern is security, right? National security. We will have to vet. And I think there will have to be a process. I understand the humanitarian thing. Again, I was really, I tell you no lie, when Dr. Brown initially accepted the Uyghurs, I was like, what are we doing? Like, he doesn't have the right to do that. That was me. And over time, my mind changed. And if there are situations like that, I would definitely be open to it because I understand that some people just cannot return to their, countries. I get it. I've met people who face those kind of things. I get it. And, to Richard Scott's point, some folks may have fled their countries for legitimate reasons, just need a fresh start. Some, may have lost everything they had in wars and displacement, corruption. So on the surface, I'm against the idea based on how it's being presented by the US government, or at least the media. But I see, if it's done right, how it can be beneficial for all parties. Suzanne Ingham says, I'm 100% against this. We can't handle the mess we have here, and to bring deportees here would be a really stupid move. Fair enough. Fair enough, Suzanne. That's fair. That is fair. All right, folks. We gotta go give some thanks to Titan Express and Secure. Then we'll bring Teo Dill in for your daily hour news break. Then I think for the first time ever, she's part of the TDH community. We've got Senator Arianna Hodgson coming on. We're going to talk about the seed fund we were talking about the other day. And I was talking to my colleague Larry Marshall Jr. last night, because we talk pretty often about things. And he thought it was brilliant, this idea. He said, that's what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying? Like something like this. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's different, but it makes sense. And Larry's the hardest person on the show. And I think when it comes to stuff, like, he don't like anything to do with politics. Like but when he said that, I was like, this is what we need. And I'm not in caucus. I don't go to Central Committee. But I am looking forward to the conversation with Senator Hodgson coming up. And I know you will see a former senator. Once a senator, always a senator. So looking forward to that. But in the meantime, let's show some love to Titan Express and Secure. Then we'll get to Teo Dill with the news break and take our first commercial break and come back with the senator after that.
The daily discussion is brought to you by Titan Express and Secure. Titan Express delivers safe, professional, and reliable transportation and tours across the island. From island tours to cultural experiences, they set the standard. And Secure is your go-to for property management, waste management, and residential and commercial services. Visit securebda.com. Professional, punctual, and reliable service is their commitment to you.
Good morning, Bermuda. Today's news is brought to you by People's Pharmacy. 41 years behind us, a new chapter ahead. People's Pharmacy, always here for you. Starting off today's news, the Bermuda Police Service is advising the public that the trenching project in the West End is scheduled to resume on Monday, 19th of January. Works will take place between Barnes Corner and Franks Bay. Traffic controls will be in effect, and motorists are urged to allow extra travel time as there are no alternate routes available. In another Bermuda police update, a serious road traffic collision occurred in Middle Road, Warwick on Sunday, the 18th of January. Police and other first responders attended a report of a road traffic collision on the Middle Road near the junction with Cobbs Hill, involving a small truck and a car. It is believed that the truck experienced mechanical difficulties while approaching the junction and collided with the westbound vehicle. The female driver of the car was freed by fire service personnel and transported to the hospital for treatment. She was the only reported injury, and the roadway has since been cleared and inquiries into the collision are ongoing. Continuing with our news for today, the Department of Environment and Natural Resources has confirmed a second discovery of red imported fire ants at the Hamilton cargo dock. The ants are thought to have arrived through bulk cargo, prompting DENR to urge recent importers, especially from the southeastern United States, to inspect their properties as island-wide surveys continue. The public is advised not to disturb suspected mounds and to report any sightings or unusual stings to fire ants at gov.bm. Last in the news for today, the Bermuda Triangle Challenge races commenced this past weekend, drawing local and overseas runners for a high-energy weekend of competition and celebration. Athletes competed across multiple distances, culminating in strong performances and well-earned victories. Spectators were treated to memorable moments over the weekend, which included a surprise marriage proposal and an unfortunate smoke show caused by a nearby fire near the finish line on Sunday's race. Adding to the excitement, the mascot race returned for the second year in a row this year, delighting crowds and reinforcing the event's reputation as both a serious athletic contest and a fun-filled community spectacle. Now it's time to take a look at the forecast. For the weather today, we're looking at a high of 72 and a low of 70 degrees. The chance of precipitation is currently at 80% and rain showers are expected throughout the day. That's all for the news break today. My name is Simone Vaughn, and thanks for tuning in.
Thanks so much for that, Teo. Appreciate that. You know what? I want to touch on the Christopher Joe DeShields thing real quickly from Teo's news. What's with us, man? I know it's just, charged or allegations at this time, but it's like the same with Black Lives Matter in the U.S. and like these organizations that are supposed to be supporting, groups who are fighting against injustice. What's with people and getting their hands on money? Just like we're not helping ourselves. Like when I see the folks at Black Lives Matter, and look, Drewski had a skit this week about the church pastors, which was hilarious, by the way. It was hilarious. And there's this big debate online that he's mocking the church. And the fact that church people are mad at Drewski saying he's mocking the church and not mad at the people, the pastors that he's actually mocking, tells you we are so far gone that it's actually probably no longer about the God that you're serving, but the people you're protecting. The same with this stuff. Wrong is wrong. And we cannot keep allowing people to take over movements that are important to communities, Black Lives Matter, whatever it is, this campaign, that campaign, and then it becomes all about self-interest. So I hope, for Mr. Joe DeShields' sake, that none of it is true. Now, that said, our topic this morning, thank you to, I don't know if I can say the name, but one of the bosses in the back sent something to remind me that Bermuda did accept Vietnamese refugees back in the 70s, 80s, when the Vietnam War ended in 1975. And you can actually, if you remember, one of them, and I'm just going to read from the Royal Gazette in 2015, Mr. Diep, Jimmy Diep. He was one of the 5 refugees from Vietnam that were selected in 1980 to be brought to the island from a camp where they were being held in Hong Kong. Now, if you're familiar with Mr. Diep, well, Mr. Diep gradually found a new life and settled as the manager of the Rubis Van Buren gas station in Flats. So very familiar person in Bermuda. So this wouldn't be the first time. The Wiggers was not the first time. Bermuda has done this kind of thing previously. So thank you to TDH audience who continue to send me information to make sure that I can add further clarity to the conversation. Days of the year, real quickly. We got the senator coming on. We got to make time for her. But it's International Hot and Spicy Food Day. This is my favorite food day, I'm going to tell you, on the calendar, because you all know I love spicy food, right? Now, my body can't take it like I used to. My body can't take it like I used to. But what is your favorite spicy food? What is your favorite spicy food? I'm going to go first. My favorite, it's not even really spicy to me anymore. I guess I'm just immune to it. But jerk chicken, boy. Jerk chicken. I'm gonna have some, and I'm gonna put some Scotch bonnet on it to add some more spice. Boy, jerk chicken. What is your favorite spicy food? We're gonna take a break. While we do that, keep your favorite spicy food, and when we come back, we've got Senator Arianna Hodgson joining us for today's Daily Focus. Stick with us.
People's ACW, located at King Edward VII Memorial Hospital, carries over-the-counter medicines, toys, cards, and even toiletries. Our knowledgeable staff are there whether you're at emergency, visiting family, or a member of BHB staff, to show you our best even when you're feeling your worst. People's ACW, we're here for you.
Take a look at our workwear for construction workers and tradesmen. Durable, stretchable in all the right places and plenty of options for tools and accessories. Paired with our wide range of tough and comfortable footwear, you can't go wrong. As you can see, Medical House really is a one-stop shop for everybody. We can't wait to see you.
See it all at our new expanded location on Bakery Lane.
Discover Drop It, your go-to grocery delivery. Browse and select from a wide range of groceries, from fresh produce to daily essentials. Our friendly drivers deliver fresh groceries to your door fast, saving you time and hassle. With Drop It, you get fresh groceries delivered fast so you can focus on what really matters. Drop It, freshness at your doorstep, delivered to your door with Lindo's. Why go anyplace else?
For over 70 years, Bermuda Pest Control has been protecting homes and businesses island-wide. We offer a full suite of services, including rodent control, termite fumigation, and general insect control and maintenance. Our team of experts will quickly and efficiently eliminate any pest problem you may have. With Bermuda Pest Control, you can enjoy a pest-free home in no time. We're committed to providing fast, reliable, and solution-driven services for our customers. It's what we've been doing since 1952. Call Bermuda Pest Control today and say goodbye to pests for good.
Alrighty, welcome back to the Big Show. I am Jamel Hartman, and this is the Daily Hour brought to you by the BAC Group of Companies, Medical House Linda's, People's Pharmacy, and a big love to Hot 107.5 for ensuring that we can pump through the radio airwaves with these most important community conversations. Folks, don't forget to subscribe on our website. Follow us on all of our social media channels to stay up to date with all that we have going on. Help us grow beyond the mic as we do our part to continue to improve our community. All right. Before we went to break, I asked, what's your favorite spicy food? This is International Hot and Spicy Food Day. Richard Scott is aligned with me. He says jerk chicken. Sean Smith says, when I could eat it, jerk fish. All right. Everybody's a jerk today. Tanya Cheeseman says, barbecue jerk chicken. We've got Suzanne Ingham says, tikka masala from Rotisserie. A1 Smith. She says, I love it really, really hot and spicy. The more I eat, the more I want. Oh, you love pain. Kenton Trott says, bro, Jamel, we must be cousins or something. The only spicy food I eat, eat is jerk chicken. We've got Nicole Walker says, authentic jerk. There is a difference. Renee Simmons says, they can have that. The Mexican food is way too spicy for me. Had enough in Denver, another place with an overload of Mexican immigrants. That sounds mean. That sounded mean, Renee Simmons. Anyway, folks, we're welcoming former Senator Arianna Hodgson onto the show. As mentioned, we discussed, she had a piece in the Royal Gazette about a seed fund recently. We discussed it earlier this week, and everyone seemed like they would be in favor. Some required more information. So we are grateful that she has made time for us on such short notice to have a discussion. Let's give a warm TDH welcome. She's a part of the TDH community, but her first time on the other side. Let's give her a hand and, welcome her into the studio. Greetings, madam. How are you?
I am good, Jamel. How are you this morning?
I'm okay. I kind of want some jerk chicken, but I'm fasting and got the skin, so I don't think I could really have it right now. I gotta ask you though, what's your favorite hot and spicy food?
So I'm actually not a hot or spicy girl. I recently started adding all the extra. Well, not recently. Perhaps back in university, I would have explored more with pepper. Not particularly hot sauce, maybe graduating. I started exploring some of that. I do a chicken korma with a little tikka masala sauce, just so that has a little kick.
A little kick.
Exactly, but no, not hot and spicy.
Okay, all right. Not everybody's on the hot and spicy side. Before we jump into today's discussion, I gotta ask you though about this morning's discussion. If you had, because I would love to know from any politician, any side, their thoughts on what's going on right now in the U.S. in terms of if Bermuda were put in that position, would it be something you'd support?
Politics, first thing in the morning. What I would say is that obviously I won't speak on behalf of the government. I also, because of my position right now, I want to be cautious not to say too much. What I would say is that it comes down to the will of the Bermudian people, and whether or not it's a sensible move for Bermuda is ultimately the decision that would have to be made. But there have been many or a number of instances where we have either deported non-Bermudians, foreign nationals, for different instances, and so it would be a conversation to be had.
Indeed, indeed. Senator, thanks again for joining us today. As mentioned, I took a liking to what I read about the seed fund, and I've had discussions with the team on this past Sunday. Some of my colleagues, we've discussed it, and it's just like I just cannot see why something like this couldn't be done and couldn't be done fast. But for those who don't know or just tuning in, what was proposed was a seed fund for every newborn in Bermuda. Can you just explain the idea in simple terms and what motivated you to suggest it?
In simple terms, the idea is that the government will back an initial seed fund. I said $500, but the actual number could be determined by the government, the analysts, the experts in the room. But essentially, along with this savings seeds fund, I would like to see a financial literacy component. And so over the past few years in particular, there's been a call for more financial literacy amongst Bermudians in general. And I thought this would be a good opportunity to sort of pair the two. It was actually back in 2023 or late 2022. I was doing some work in the Ministry of Finance, and we were looking at payroll tax reforms, reducing the tax for those on the lower end of the spectrum and increasing it for those at the higher end. And when I was doing my research, I stumbled upon Singapore. And basically what was unique about Singapore is that they've actually institutionalized savings as part of their daily life. And that's obviously something that's far different from what we see here in Bermuda or on this side of the world. And then around the same time in 2023, there was a young lady who was saying that there aren't many persons in the House that are considering women and families and future generations. It made me start thinking about my role as a legislator at the time and how I would approach my work going forward. Fast forward to this year, 2026, it was something that I've been sitting on. I remember seeing Jamaica doing something in this space. Obviously, we've heard about the Trump accounts. And I said, you know what, I had actually planned to share an op-ed about the struggles around IVF and infertility in Bermuda. And then I just had the thought, I said, you know what, it's the beginning of the year, let's start a conversation. And so I put pen to paper. I try to create as simple of a model as possible because I'm not the finance expert, right? And so my take was that if I put the idea out there, I float it, I see if there are interests, I see what the concerns are so that we can avoid those or navigate those, and essentially just get it going. I didn't have a particular expectation. The Royal Gazette had reached out and they asked about questions like timeline and the like. And so obviously, ultimately, it would come down to whether or not the government decided to move forward. And the feasibility of it would just depend on their commitment to advancing this type of policy.
You've described this as an intentional, universal investment rather than just a cash gift.
Yeah.
Can you go deeper? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I think it's a generational opportunity, so to speak. I think in other jurisdictions, they've tried the baby bonuses. They've tried to give, a lump sum of cash in the first, primary months. And some jurisdictions have, put trackers in terms of at this stage you can get this, it's this stage you can get that. Some jurisdictions are looking to incentivize persons and married couples in particular in some areas to have more children. To me, although we do need obviously more children in Bermuda, this wasn't about increasing our population. This was about an intentional investment. This was about pausing to say, listen, we don't have access to a 4-year college in Bermuda, which means our young people are going to have to travel overseas. What are we doing to ensure that our young Bermudians have those opportunities? Through savings and scholarships and other means, I was afforded the opportunity. But even, it was funny, I had a conversation with my mother last year about, for example, just summer camps. I'm like, how did you afford summer camps? And she said, I was summer camp. I took your cousins, and you came to work with me. I took breaks in the day. We explored the area around us. But just obviously, as I've grown up, as I have my own child, as I'm thinking about what it would look like to support her in these next years, it comes down to money. And how can we diversify the types of investments in our young people is kind of where I'm at.
So, you just mentioned, it's not about, having more babies, but Bermuda's right now, I believe I read, has fewer than 500 births per year.
Yeah,
right?
And it's been that way for essentially the past 10 years. And so it doesn't look like we're going to see a big boom. in other jurisdictions. Although they've had these types of programs and offerings, they haven't necessarily seen the increase in births, right, since having these types of programs. So birth rate aside, and us being less than 500 children being born, I just think it's a manageable program. The initial fund would be $250,000 on paper. Of course, there will be a separate fund which will need to go towards the financial literacy component. But I think that that's a manageable number.
Okay. You've also emphasized pairing the fund with age-appropriate financial education. You mentioned financial literacy. What would that look like in practice? Would it be in schools, at home, or through community programs?
So I've started to do some thinking around that as well. And I think what will work best perhaps is a general commitment from our schools, and that's public and private. Supplemental to that would be in I guess, increased engagement through our community groups, through our young, through the places where our young people are. But I think that if we can start in the schools, something annual, obviously when they're younger, there will be less touch points. But I don't see why a middle or high school student shouldn't have weekly or at least twice a month engagement around financial literacy. I think it's the only way to strengthen our economy.
Audience, if you have any questions or comments, you can send them through. I'll get through as many as possible. Well, you know what? Let's go to the comments. We've got Amari Simon says the OBA had proposed something similar with a $2,500 investment. You said that the $500 isn't necessarily, written in stone. Like it's not something, it's just a number you threw out. How should we determine what the number looks like? Like how do we go about determining what's best? Or would it be case by case basis based on family setup?
Well, what I would say is there have been, I guess, proposals similar to this. My colleagues have reached out, friends of all sides, they've reached out to say that they've had conversations about a similar proposal. What I can say is that ultimately, I mentioned this in my conversation with Royal Gazette, under Premier Bert's leadership, he spoke about Bermudians benefiting when the government performs well. And so I think that it would be for the government to determine what an appropriate number would be. Obviously, the idea of starting small without additional contributions won't grow into much, right? So initial $500 after about 18 years won't grow above, $2,000. But now if I'm investing $50 on a monthly basis, if it's $200, we start to see the increase. And I don't think it's so much about the initial seed amount per se, and forgive me if I'm incorrect to the financial experts, but it's about looking at how we can continue those contributions over time and what that would look like. If we, pay off all of our debt in however many years, then perhaps obviously the government will be in a different position. Maybe we can look at matching funds on that aspect. I think one of the key considerations is that, some persons feel that it's not the government's role. Some persons feel that the government has the means. Some feel that if it's not on this end, it'll be at the other end when we're supporting housing and financial assistance and other social programs. So it's about finding, I guess, the happy medium, finding something that works for all parties, but something that's, financially viable.
Indeed. Suzanne Ingham's asking, is this for Bermudian babies or foreign babies? Who gets this?
I would assume that it would be the Bermudian-born children. I can't speak to the actual policy that may come to fruition, but obviously I'm someone who's open to a conversation. So if somebody could explain to me why other groups should be included or what it would look like to include other groups, I'm not opposed to a conversation.
We've got Kenton Trott says, I really like this initiative and thought process behind it. Thank you, Arianna Hodgson, for your passion and efforts. We've got Dr. Maria Seaman says, we continue to support a lack of father/and/or family responsibility. Thinking of management of finances needs to be done before conception. And she goes on to say, let's save more money for all families by dealing with food prices. This is pandering to a socialist mindset. For those who feel like this is socialist, like this is like handout, not empowerment. What are your thoughts about that?
I just disagree. I take her point that in some instances, fathers aren't showing up in the way that we'd ideally like to see them. I remember actually late last year, we had a conversation about what it would look like for there to be more support for fathers, more support in terms of not just parenting, but what does it look like to be a man in Bermuda's society? What does it look like to be an uncle? Just supporting men in the same way that we provide those types of training for women. What I would say is, the other option would be just to give a mother, the incentives to have babies, those gifts. This isn't a gift. This is an intentional investment. This is something that will have, particular restrictions. This isn't something that anybody's dipping into in those first 18 years, at least not as I see it. And ultimately, I do want to make sure that these funds then go towards education, perhaps an entrepreneurial journey, or funding some type of purchase, perhaps a down payment for a house, depending on how much one is able to invest or contribute. What was also interesting in some jurisdictions is that, you have to, in some instances, put a cap on what the families or employers or individuals can contribute when you consider, for example, a government matching that. How do we make sure that this doesn't get out of control? There are also some questions about whether or not this should be specifically for low-income families or whether this should be a broad brush. The way I view it, until I learn something that changes my mind, this would be a universal, automatic program for every, perhaps Bermudian-born child.
Okay. Mark Arthur's asking, could this seed fund could be used as a tax write-off for corporations?
I won't pretend to be a tax expert. I have engaged in some of the conversations that they're having, particularly in the US. There were concerns about double taxation with the current, construct in their area. But I'm not a tax expert, so I won't go too far down that line.
We've got Shamari Sky. He says, how would we find the 500 should kids born in households that have low income have their contribution tax funded and a payment plan put in place to pay back $20 a month?
No, so the idea is actually a guaranteed seed contribution from the government. So every person would start with the same $500. And then obviously there are different means amongst different families. But what I also saw, if it's not government contributions, is the opportunity for organizations to contribute. But again, I think that it depends on where we are as a society, where we are in terms of our economic performance. When we have more, we can do more. When we don't, we can't. But I think it's also important to start with a pilot so that we say, okay, in the first 2 years or perhaps even 5 years, this is what worked, this is what didn't work, this is what we're expecting to see. One of the interesting bits is that because this isn't a fund that will be touched in the first 18 years of life, obviously not everybody has a desire to perhaps seek higher education. And so what would that mean for them? I saw in one jurisdiction where you can choose not to touch the money at 18 and continue to let it build. And that even provides opportunities that one wouldn't have considered. But it changes the conversation into this idea of building generational wealth and intergenerational wealth, and how we can put our future generations just on a better footing.
Indeed. We've got Anika de Shields says, I envision that it would be similar to a pension fund, shorter duration. I was thinking that. Yeah.
And that's kind of even the model that they have in New Zealand, where they start this fund now and they're saving, but they can't touch theirs until 65.
But why don't we think pension funds are socialist, but something like this is socialist?
Again, it's a mindset thing, right? I think historically, we don't have that same conversation about financial assistance, about the childcare benefit being expanded. But when we diversify what this investment looks like, obviously persons are saying, wait, we haven't done this before. So I think it's a natural response to be skeptical. But I think as you learn more about it, right? Every time someone asks me a question, I'm doing a little Googling, I'm looking at a policy, I'm seeing what the different, governments are saying. And just for me, I really don't think we should focus on it being about the low-income families. I think it's for me, it's literally a mindset shift. So for example, between the ages of 0 and 4, this is when the financial literacy can begin. Of course, financial literacy between 0 and 4 looks a lot different than it does at 16 and 18. So when I think about a child, a toddler, we start to imagine, or imaginative play, right? Having the grocery stores, playing with the fake coins, the fake money. When they get a little bit older, 5 and 7, now they're adding money. Now they're thinking about save, spend, share. As you get older, you're thinking about sitting down a young person to say, this is what it looks like to create a bank account, to open a bank account. This is what it looks like. These are the additional documents that you need to support this type of application. I know so many adults who are still afraid to go to the bank and complete applications, or who have never completed an application for a loan. And we can do this much earlier. They're capable.
Yeah. Renee Simmons is asking, will the seed fund be invested locally, or is it a foreign investment?
I can't speak to the specific mechanics, but my assumption would be obviously something more broader, funds that, the way we are typically encouraged to invest, even when you think about your pension investment, right? I think we'll follow a similar model.
Okay. Taj Don Villada Bridge says this is a socialist policy, and that's a good thing. What do you think has stopped the PLP from pursuing such common sense progression policy thus far?
Perhaps I have to do more digging into what hasn't advanced this policy, because like I said, I've heard from colleagues who have said they've mentioned something similarly. I'm not sure if we were limited in terms of finances. I'm not sure. And perhaps this is also why I brought it up now. Actually, that's what it was as well. I had looked at the pre-budget report, and I was just thinking about how we're spending money. With the corporate income tax, we have a bit more in the kitty. What are we doing with it? I think that now we're at a different place. We can think about it differently. And so it is my hope that they'll give it some serious consideration. And now that we seem to have, the general, not acceptance or agreement or understanding amongst the population, because this is a conversation that is taking its own life, I think it's a good time to say, okay, what would this look like? I don't think that it's an impossible ask, like you said. I think that we can go through the fine-tuning what the actual program looks like. We can implement it in the next 2 years, and then we refine it in years 3 to 5, like we do with other programs. But ultimately, it would depend on whether or not the government agrees that this is a good priority.
Yeah. We've got Renee Simmons asking, can it be transferred to a pension fund if not used for educational purposes?
And I think with Bermuda's, aging population, perhaps that is the types of conversation that we should be having. And so I'll take it upon myself to look at if there are any jurisdictions who've done something similar. But what I saw in the one instance was that there was a person, so to speak, who didn't access their fund, and then their somehow was transferred to another family member, and they were just able to continue growing it. But I think that's sensible. For Bermuda's. Yeah, for Bermuda.
I think this is very important right here. Anika Shield says many of our parents didn't have the Pensions Act. Thus, many need to work past retirement age, not only due to the decline in population. There's also social insurance in the U.S., Social Security. There are many things that once we hit a certain age, there's support. With the mindset that, and I'll show what Dr. Seaman's saying is, she's got quite a few comments, and I'll go through them all. Need to do more teaching and training and not trying to replace what is missing. Those who know, how does $500 help to pay down pay for a house? And then she goes on to say, what about our seniors who need and have already seeded by working all their lives? We are spoiling the younger ones. Let me just say this, Dr. Seaman, I'm got love for you, but I think we can stick to our guns while still evolving our mindset. And it's my hope, Dr. Seaman, that you or anyone who thinks like you in this respect is not so rooted or cemented in their thoughts that they can't even understand how the world has evolved. And not everything, and I'm going to quote David Burt, what he said to me many years ago. He was sitting off drinking vodka at his house. Yeah, I'm sharing too much. But we were doing that, and I was going on about government and laws. And he said to me, Mr. Hartman, not all laws are bad laws, Some are actually here to protect us. My point in saying that to you, Dr. Seaman, is not everything new is bad. And I'm not saying you said that, but it's coming across like something that would seem so easy to do, right? Access funds to actually give people an opportunity, right? Is money they can't touch. There's going to be things there for it. I know what you're saying. I believe in working for mine. I don't want anyone giving me anything. That's how I think. But at the same time, we just discussed yesterday about people who are creating GoFundMe accounts. And we discussed the idea that Shamari Sky, one of our TDH members, had about how we can basically support a medical opportunity or fund to ensure that people don't need that. What we have to understand is we have to be more empathetic in our community and understand that some people didn't choose their situations, but they lived these situations. And this, to me, I know people like these terms, capitalist, conservative, socialist, this and that. Rid yourselves of the mindset that this is in this category and start thinking about the human element. And if we start putting the human element before anything else, I guarantee you the world will be a much better place. And that's not just to Dr. Seaman, that's to anyone. All right, if you had an answer, please.
I just wanted to add, obviously, I think the government continues to do its work to support seniors. Whether or not that could be more, whether or not that could be diversified, obviously, that's up for debate. But what I think we can universally agree that if we start to save and invest earlier, then the benefits will be greater later on. And so even when I think about a senior, I mentioned this briefly in my op-ed, but I was sitting in the pension seminar last year, and they were talking about the fact that we only push out savings and investments because we are relying on this idea that we're going to finish up at 65. Now, if we wanted to scale that back and say, what would it look like to retire at 55 or sooner, we would do things differently. And so I think that what we have right now is just an opportunity to do something differently. There's a quote, and it says that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. I'm thinking about even this whole idea of the sandwich generation, where our working population is taking care of young people, trying to put them to school, but then also supporting their parents. Think about what it would look like for them to be relieved of the financial pressures to put their child through school. If it's not a child who wants to, pursue university, what would it look like to give them and obviously depending on the contributions over the years, even $2,000 to start a business could be what somebody needs at 18, somebody who wouldn't have ordinarily had that. But when you look at the power of compound interest, when you look at the power of somebody who is able to save, whether that's, or even to receive, monies from family members, maybe some organizations who find, that this is a program that they'd like to support. I just think that there's opportunity.
As a person, Senator, who, again, people ask me often, they say, well, what's something you want to change? Because, I ain't heard from you since conscription. I'm like, because people weren't ready for conscription. And I don't know what I really care about is reparations, right? I am in reparations. And but one of the concerns, yeah, no, seriously, but one of the concerns that people keep saying about reparations, and I get it, is, oh, so Black people got reparations, are just going to spend the money recklessly, whatever. No, that may be true, but that's neither here or there to me.
Exactly.
Right? But in saying that, there are some people who may look at this like that. It's like, okay, so they got 18 and now they can touch the funds. And I know you've mentioned financial literacy, but how do we ensure that these funds are actually going to be used to help Bermuda? Like, what rules or have we thought that far to make sure that, if that 500 turns into 50,000 over that period, how can these funds be, like, what are some things we can do to ensure this money helps Bermuda and Bermudians?
Well, I think that obviously directly the education of a Bermudian is ultimately going to benefit us. If a Bermudian is able to buy a piece of rock, then of course the economy is continuing to do its thing. I looked at some research, and they were saying that children with savings accounts are more likely to finish high school and pursue college. They're more likely to have to consider emergency funds. They're more likely to have investments as adults. They're also less likely to participate in antisocial behaviors. And so considering the impact of just having a savings account, shifting your mindset around the opportunities that can literally present themselves, I think we'll find ourselves. Imagine a 5-year-old knowing that they have a savings account that is going to support them when they're ready to determine what they want to do after, schooling. I just think it's so empowering. Right now, there are young people who don't even know where the food in our grocery stores come from. And so I think this is about widening or getting conversations going. There are not enough young people and even me, right? I can do a little bit more or to make sure that my child is better prepared, right? In terms of her own financial literacy. And even when I think about, I was looking through our memory box, and there was a paper that had the penny, the nickel, the dimes, all of that on it. And, we were having those conversations about money. As she got older, we were giving her money. She now has her bank account. She now has a debit card. She's going to go on a school trip. And listen, they said you need $125 for food. What does that look like on a daily basis? They said, listen, if you spend $300, you're not going to have to pay duty when you return. So let's aim to spend $300 if you are going to. And then interestingly, we traveled, and my daughter now tells me, we don't need that. Or you have something similar. And she's 11. She just turned 11.
Good. That's
right? But I want her to be better than I am, because even on a personal note, when I think about my family, we're known to have property, right? But we're not known to have a lot of cash. So just the way we operate, our family legacy, we have to do things a bit differently. And, my ancestors were farmers and shopkeepers and teachers. And, that just makes me think about the overgrown garden down there and what it would look like if, Trump increased our tariffs. And it's just, the personal responsibility is really important to me.
I'm glad you mentioned personal response. And I think that's the overall point that Dr. Seaman was trying to make. It's like, there has to be a level of personal responsibility. I think you mentioned earlier, we need to put human aspect way before child is conceived. We're not teaching responsibility enough. And I agree with her. I agree with it from that.
And perhaps that's a lesson that comes out of these financial literacy discussions, because what I started to envision is this Bermuda centric curriculum, so to speak. And so in our first lessons, we're going to be talking about how much an avocado costs. We're going to be talking about what it looks like to buy your bike at 16 and to pay for the insurance. And then at 18, car insurance. And I think we have an opportunity to really change the trajectory for our young people.
Yeah.
We're not having these conversations. And the challenge, although I take Ms. Seaman's point, is that, listen, a lot of parents don't have the knowledge to share with their young people.
Yeah.
So perhaps this is where government steps in. But also, I think there are so many organizations throughout our community who could even take the financial literacy piece and run with it. You have the finance professionals. You've got the Zach Wilson, who brought, the Lumina Festival last year. There's Pocket Change Bermuda. I bought one of those cards as a gift to somebody. But again, where it would be a no-brainer for one child, I said, perhaps it's not right for, and now I perhaps regret it, right? Perhaps I should have made sure that the other child had the game. But it just changes the conversation, shifts the mindset, presents an opportunity to just learn more than we knew.
Indeed. Go to these final 2 questions from the audience. We've got a second. He says, I may have missed this, but would this be for children born to guest workers as well? If so, what happens if they leave Bermuda before turning 18? And he said to Jamel's question, what if the Bermudian child leaves Bermuda before turning 18?
So I won't speak to it again. I think it will be for the government to determine ultimately. And I assume it will likely be for Bermudian children, but even just for numbers' sake or for consideration. When I last looked, it's about a quarter of the children who are being born in Bermuda are non-Bermudian. And so perhaps if we're looking at a smaller number of actual persons who are eligible, then perhaps we increase the seed fund amount. But ultimately, it would be for the government to decide what they'd like to see and how they'd like the framework to ultimately play out.
All right. Dr. Patricia Chapman says progressive concept and mind shift is doable as other jurisdictions. The research has proven to be successful. Senator, before you head out, for those tuned in, what would you say to them who might question the value or effectiveness of a newborn seed fund? And how can the public engage with this idea to support it or learn more?
I think perhaps a starting point is just to take it upon yourself to go learn more. Go look at Singapore and see what they're doing. You can even look at the Trump accounts right now and see what they're proposing. We can look at the UK. We can look at the various models that exist, the pension programs, and we can think about what it would actually look like to create the program that we desire. I think part of our issue as a community is that we don't operate in a way that says, hey, I have a problem, let's solve it. We wait till somebody presents a solution and we try to pick it apart. I am committing to being someone that says, listen, I considered it, I thought about it, I've looked at what works, I consider what doesn't work, and I'm leaving this for you to advance. Whether or not it's something that you envision, I envision, it's not my baby, right? Or perhaps it is, but I'd be happy just to see it evolve as it needs to, if that means an opportunity for our young people to have a little bit more financial security, but also financial literacy, not just for our young people, but for the adults who are responsible for raising them. Even in terms of legislators, I think that if we look at ourselves or our record and say, hey, what have we contributed? It will change the way we approach our rules. And it's just the same for citizens of Bermuda. What would you like to see differently? I'll be picking it up again, but I think that as we consider our low birth rate, our aging population, insurers should be covering, for example, diagnostic testing around infertility. And, ideally, I'd like to see them cover IVF treatment, but we have to get there. And one of the constraints for us in Bermuda is that we don't have a lot of the data. And I think that the data would speak to the need for something like a seed fund that grows and that, to Ms. Seaman's point, some of the lesson will come in saying, hey, this person didn't make additional contributions, and at the end, they only have $2,000 versus this person found a means and, continued to increase that number, and now they're able to do so much more. And guess what? Those next children, they're able to hear that story, they're able to learn the lesson and just change how they operate. I think, we're creatures of habit, and habitually we haven't been taught, and I get it, right? The cost of living and other factors impact our ability to save. But like we see in Singapore, we need to start having a conversation about what it looks like to be a society that saves. And there are many ways to save. So that's what I would say.
Jonathan, thank you so much for making time for us. Please don't let it be the last time you come on, please. I mean, it's been...
Well, I would love to come back again when I have some more juice around these other, I guess. My focus is women, families, and future generations. And I think if we shift the way we even draft legislation, I had that conversation earlier in terms of just widening our considerations. It's just going to be so important. And I think when the Bermudian people see something like this, it started as an idea. We started to have conversations. We started to increase the buy-in. And now we all are invested in making sure that this program works. Hopefully more persons will tune into the fine lines, right? What does the legislation actually say? What do the regulations actually say? The public should understand how regulations are created, who drafts them, who thinks of these things. And I would love to see a more active, electorate.
Indeed. Thank you. This has been awesome. And I there's some other things we've discussed in the TDH community that you brought to the public's attention that people may not know about the abortion thing, like where women have to get permission from, it's just so many things that if people don't read, they don't know these things. And you've the stuff that you've brought to light. We need to have these conversations. And when I ask people to share these conversations, it's really to beat the algorithm so that as many people in our community have access to know, because it's easy to say what are our politicians or elected officials or appointed people doing, but I guarantee you, I asked my own team, how many of you know about the seed fund? And not everybody knew that what you had said. So it's important, and I'm grateful that you're open to having these discussions. And I just want to encourage you to keep doing it, because if you can get some of my team to think, wow, that's a good idea, you're doing it.
I was pleased when I heard your conversation a few days ago. I was a bit concerned because I think it's sensible, right? That people will have questions, or they'd like to say, have you considered this? Have you considered that? And I'm really big on just having a conversation. I'm happy to disagree. I'm happier when we agree. Yeah.
Disagreement's part of the process, but thanks again, and we'll keep in touch.
Yes.
You're doing the work, keep doing what you're doing, and have a wonderful weekend.
You as well. Oh, it's Friday. Oh, this is a great day. You enjoy as well. Talk soon.
All right. Senator Arianna Hodgson, folks, if you appreciated that discussion, whatever platform you're streaming on, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, X, or Instagram, give us a thumbs up, a love, a like. We're going to take our final break. Come back. We've got a daily play for you before we let you go off to celebrate this long weekend for the Daily Hour, because it's Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday on Monday. So we're going to honor that with a day off. Stick with us. We'll be right back.
Dreaming of expanding your business? With BDC's Loan Guarantee Program, we support your ambitions. Get up to 75% guarantee on bank or credit union loans up to $300,000. Just your vision and our support. Apply today and unlock new business opportunities. BDC, Bermuda business starts here.
Looking for the best care for your pets? Novazok Feed and Supply has everything you need, from top quality foods to toys and supplies. We've got it all. Join our frequent buyer program and earn rewards every time you shop. Plus, we've been awarded the Clever Customer Initiative program for helping you save more. And don't forget, we open an hour early on Saturdays so you can get a head start on your pet care. Visit us today or shop online for easy pickup or delivery. Your pets will thank you.
Every space has a message, whether it's a store, a government office, or a doctor's waiting room. With Store Tunes Radio, transform your environment with customized music and professional messaging that keeps people informed, engaged, and at ease. Easy to use, built for organizations of every kind. Powered by Bermuda Communications Group. Store Tunes Radio, the soundtrack to better customer experiences. Visit storetunesradio.com to learn more. Alrighty, welcome back to the big show. Thanks again to Senator Arianna Hodgson for stopping by. Folks, again, if you appreciated the discussion, whatever platform you're streaming on, make sure you give us a like, love, follow, share the link with your friends, your family, your colleagues. Those are the kind of community discussions why this show exists. Also, don't forget to make sure you subscribe to our website, and I'll tell you why in a couple of days. All right. All right. Thanks again to BAC Group of Companies, Medical House Lindos, People's Pharmacy, and big shout out love to Hot 1075 for ensuring we can pump through the radio airwaves with these most important community conversations. It is time for the Daily Play, brought to you by Bermuda Trivia, now available at stores throughout Bermuda. Follow Bermuda Trivia on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, and TikTok to find out why it's Bermuda's favorite trivia game. All right. It's the things you should know today. All right. I don't know why anyone wouldn't know this, and I don't even know if anyone still does this, but what does the www stand for in a website browser? I mean, everybody got that. Julie, Stacey, and Brown. That does anyone still write www before you put it in? Aaron Smith got it. I couldn't tell you the last time I wrote www. Sharon got it. I didn't. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Reverend Dr. Emily Gill Dill got it. All right, that's an easy one. So today for the daily inspiration, I want you all to share with me your favorite Dr. Martin Luther King quotes. That's what we're going to do. And I'll read all of them. So for the daily inspiration, I want you all to share your favorite Dr. Martin Luther King quotes while I wrap it up. As far as the discussion early this morning, I think Bermudians would have every right to be concerned if Bermuda were to ever agree, like some CARICOM countries have, as far as receiving deportees. I think the human element does supersede anything else. Like with accepting the Vietnamese and the Uyghurs. But what Bermuda can't afford to do is accept just anyone in the interest of another country's politics. I would love to know how some government officials feel about this. And I would think that because Bermuda is a territory of the UK, our government couldn't just do something like this anyway, but kind of happened already. As far as the conversation with Senator Arianna Hodgson, I love the idea. I love the components that support the idea, the financial literacy and education that comes with it. I feel like that's the most important part, because you can't be given an opportunity and empowerment just to throw it all away. So there have to be some conditions to it, but I absolutely love the idea. This is what we elect people for. This is why we support people we do, because they're bringing new ideas that they believe can help the country both in the short and long term. So hopefully these conversations don't die off and we can continue to have discussions until we get to a place in which we believe that everyone has a chance, an equitable chance, to live a decent and honorable life. All right. Well, I said for daily inspiration, we're going to read some of your favorite Dr. Martin Luther King quotes. So let's start. Stacey Ann Brown says our favorite quote from Dr. King says, "I decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear." We've got Sherilyn Johnson says, "In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends." Indeed. Charles H. Jeffs II, he says, "If we are to have peace on earth, our loyalties must become numerical rather than sectional. Our loyalties must transcend our race, our tribe, our class, and our nation. And this means we must develop a world perspective." Okay. And we've got Manuela says, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." All right. This is one of my favorites. "A man who won't die for something is not fit to live." Woo. That's one of my favorites. Of course, you knew that would be one of my favorites, but that's one of my favorites, folks. There will be no live show on Monday. We'll be back on Tuesday if all goes well. All right. So thank you all for your support. Thank you for such an awesome week of conversations with some great people this week. Don't forget to subscribe on our website. Follow us on all of our social media channels to stay up to date with all that we have going on. Help us grow beyond the mic as we do our part to continue to improve our community. Thanks again to our partners, the BAC Group of Companies, Medical House Lindos, People's Pharmacy, and big love to Hot 1075 for ensuring that we're able to pump through the radio airways with these most important community conversations. As always, we appreciate you, we love you, and we thank you for making us part of your daily routine. If all goes well, we'll be back to do this again with you on Tuesday. I'm Jamal Hartman. Please do make it a safe and a great day. We are out. Peace.